What's up, everybody? Welcome to the CanesInSight podcast powered by Anijar and Levine Accident Attorneys. Got a great show for you, the last of our position previews. We are digging deep into the cornerback position. Also got some interviews related to that position. Cornerbacks coach Chevis Jackson sat down with Peter. Got to add that interview. Also, Deani Hill, transfer that Chevis Jackson brought from Marshall to join this cornerback rotation. Talk to him. Both great interviews. You'll catch that on the back end of our position preview. Had Mike Ryan on the show yesterday. He is now a member of the CanesInSight team. A lot of new listeners because of that. Biggest commit we've had probably since Pete back in 2012. Excited. If you're joining us for the first time, thank you. Welcome. And some of the old-time listeners, more consistent listeners, there was concern, hey, we're excited about Mike, but are you guys getting away from the bread and butter football talk, the straightforward stuff? Listen, we're on every day, plus extra shows that we're going to be doing, extra type of content we're going to be doing. We're going to give you a lot of flavors, but make no mistake, we will give you the absolute best, most direct info on the team and analysis the best we can, including today with the cornerback position. So gonna have something for everybody, but really, really excited to have Mike join us. He is the producer of the biggest podcast in the world of sports with the Le Batard Show and does a ton of other things. Multi-talented, number one on iTunes with music, and of course, a huge Canes fan and a huge Canes booster with inside information. So really excited to have him on board. He'll be on every Wednesday. First, I want to talk about some folks that are always no fluff. Anijar and Levine Accident Attorneys. If you or someone you care about has been injured in an accident, you could be entitled to significant compensation. 1-800-747-FREE, 1-800-747-3733. Take back control of your life with Anijar and Levine Accident Attorneys. So, Pete, hop in. This position has been much discussed, as has safety, which we talked about in a previous episode. Secondary is the biggest question mark heading into the season. I'll be honest with you. I've been talking to sources about practice, and the first few, this position is maybe one that's impressed a little more than others. But you've been out there and seen some of these drills. What do you see with the cornerback position?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, and again, we'll go through all these guys one by one here, but what a jump Daryl Porter made last year. I think he's one of the best cornerbacks in the ACC, and I think has a real chance to be a draft pick at year's end here. But some of these body types are very impressive. You look at Jadaeus Richard, you look at Damari Brown, who, again, we'll get into in depth in just a moment. Deani Hill can run. You look at some of these freshmen, OJ Frederick. So the body types are there. Again, a little bit like safety, where you're going to have to rely on guys that you haven't necessarily had to rely on yet. But I think talk about some of the experience that some of these guys got at the back end of last season. Damari Brown, Jadaeus Richard showing up big in that Florida State game where there was a lot of talk about those receivers over there. So I think it's a group that should take a big step this year. Excited about Chevis Jackson on board. Again, like you said, had a chance to talk to him and have heard a lot about his development skills, his recruiting skills as a coach at that position. I think he's a perfect fit for this staff. And listen, with that front 7D, I think these guys are going to have, a little bit of the heat taken off of them somewhat because, there's going to be so much pressure up front there.
Yeah, and look, to me, the cornerback position, defensive back in general, communication plays such a huge role, right? Look at the first year of Mario Cristobal, 2022. He had Tyreek Stevenson, one of the best young corners in the NFL. DJ Ivey, who played on the Cincinnati Bengals defense last year as a rookie, also had two safeties who would be drafted. The end result was 117th in pass efficiency defense, 8.3 yards per attempt. Horrible. Big plays. You saw it against Middle Tennessee State. You saw it against multiple teams on that schedule. It's not a talent issue. Coach Adai, he's the defensive backs coach at Buffalo, cornerback coach at Buffalo. So obviously he's himself a good teacher, but it didn't work. And I think the problem was largely communication. You had Kevin Steele at the time. Coach Adai, for whatever reason, it just didn't click or it didn't translate to the players. Coach Guidry comes in last year, goes from 117th in pass efficiency defense to 52nd, just 1 year. Similar players. You lose Tyreek Stevenson and DJ Ivey. So your talent goes down as far as NFL, but you improve tremendously in ranking. And I think even now, you're going to take a bigger jump because you have Coach Guidry and Coach Chevis Jackson who have coached together, who came up together. Chevis Jackson came up under Lance Guidry. So the communication is there, and I think the talent is in a very good place. It needs to get a lot better to be a championship level, multiple first-round type secondary like you're used to watching in the championship games and at the University of Miami, but you're getting closer.
Yeah, and we'll start with Daryl Porter, who, when he came over from West Virginia, everyone was excited. I think they were a little bit disappointed with the first season he had at Miami. I think once he got more reps under his belt last year, he became a fan favorite. And if you're talking just pure coverage ability, probably Miami's best guy at the position.
No doubt. And experience. He played at West Virginia before he came to Miami. He was not a transfer that came with no experience. So he's been against Big 12 offenses, performed well there, came to the ACC, picked up right where he left off. I agree, was one of the better cover corners in the ACC, solid tackler, senior experience, South Florida guy, great bloodlines. Not much you could say about Daryl Porter negative. I think, is he a Pat Surtain with the first round kind of size and speed that you just look at it and say, wow, this guy's a freak of nature? No, but there's a play in the cornerback position, knowing what to do, being well-schooled, being intelligent, being reliable. I think he gives you those things. And in this conference, Daryl Porter is one of the better players, and just not a guy that you lay out, you don't stay up at night worrying about Daryl Porter and what he's going to do on this defense.
Yes, very steady. I mean, it always seems like he's in the hip pocket of the wide receiver, willing tackler. He's not going to be laying the hit stick out there necessarily, but again, being a willing tackler at the position is something that Mario Cristobal talks about, and he definitely showed that last season. And listen, I think, like you said, a guy with the bloodlines, continues to improve, continues to get better, coachable. So I'm excited about what he could do this year for this team.
And look, let's be honest, American Heritage defensive backs tend to start, tend to play well, and tend to get drafted, right? James Williams, more of a linebacker probably, but he started many games for the University of Miami, gets drafted. Of course, guys like Surtain, Tyson Campbell, the Marco Wilson. You can go down the line as far as guys that went to American Heritage and performed well and had success in the college level. But with respect to Porter, the solid, kind of what you're getting. To me, the wild card with the upside to be really, really special is Damari Brown, another American Heritage defensive back. Guy said in media days about 200 pounds. He looks it from seeing him here. The physicality. He had some of the biggest hits of the season last year in limited time, but he had some just straight, decleters at the cornerback position. He has the size, but it's that extra thump that you talked about, Pete, watching him in drills. Some people just have that fast twitch where they just really strike and knock you back. He's got that. He does have coverage ability as well. Well-schooled at American Heritage. His brother plays at FSU, played for Miami last year, of course. His dad played. He's like all those American Heritage DBs. It seems like they have a lineage on top of the good coaching and the talent. The interesting thing to watch with him is where he lines up. Outside corner last year, looking more like he might be Miami's nickel when you step up against Florida. He's got a lot of reps there. He has that outside corner coverage ability, but I think what makes him unique in the nickel position is, to Corey Couch and Damari Brown they're both corners, right? By training, but the physicality difference, the ability to whether it's, be a force player, the ability to make a play on the ball carrier and really set a tone, the ability to come in a blitz and do damage to the quarterback. I think his physicality and his size at 200 plus pounds makes a big difference at that nickel spot.
Yeah. When you talk about physicality at defensive back, a lot of people just think about tackling and hitting, but he's not afraid to get his hands on you. I think everyone kind of expected him to struggle last year with Keon Coleman in that Florida State game. I think he held him to 4 catches, 25 yards. And of course, Keon Coleman went on to be a high draft pick for the Bills this year. And you mentioned it, D. When I was at practice here, that they were just going through these wrap up thud drills early in practice, and it just sounded different when he got the pads popping on I forget who it was. I think it was Zaquan Patterson, but he's a guy, and we've had this question asked in the comments: why use him at nickel? You saw his role last year, his ability to blitz from that nickel spot. I think he can be a huge weapon for this defense. He'll probably get a few sacks this year, some tackles, good amount of tackles for loss. And again, I keep going back to that Florida State game, but to me, that really showed his fearlessness in that moment when he hadn't played or really had to be relied on much for this team last year. So I think he's a big game player for sure.
Yeah, and he's someone I think you talk about ceiling raisers. Daryl Porter is a floor setter. You know what you're going to get there, and you need Daryl Porter. He's one of the more valuable guys on the team. You do not want to lose Daryl Porter. I think in terms of the ceiling, how high this cornerback group can go, you start with Dante Brown. Another guy who I feel is a ceiling raiser because of his physical tools, Chevis Richard out of Vanderbilt, originally from Louisiana. This is a guy with length, 6'1". He is in that 200 range as well. Basketball player when he was in high school, played safety, played different positions, kind of new to corner, ended up starting at corner as a true freshman for Vanderbilt, played against Florida as a starter, of course, Miami's opponent in their opening game. Chevis Richard played against them in 2022 as a starter last year. Didn't play as much as maybe you would have thought coming in. Did start against the Florida State Seminoles, or played against the Florida State Seminoles, and held himself, did very well. He performed very well against their bigger wide receivers. I think with his size, that's a good matchup for him. Now, the consistency against shiftier guys, right? The consistency against more of the route runners, more of the quick guys out of their breaks for a longer corner like that, using your length to your advantage and not just
grabbing with it.
Right. That to me is going to be the test with him. But this is a guy who's gotten a lot of reps with the first team, certainly this year. And upside wise, you talk about the size and the speed and the tools. I know I've talked to scouts that are intrigued by what he brings physically. And if he gets, it's kind of like a DJ Ivey situation, right? With Ivey, the confidence never quite clicked at Miami. He did have a much better senior season than his prior seasons. Texas A&M was one of the best players on the field. But then he goes to the pros, he goes to camp, and he's dominating in camp, ends up earning a roster spot, ends up playing on the defense. He got a game ball for his special teams performance. Unfortunately, got injured towards the end of the year. He'll be coming back. But the light clicked for him later. The length and the speed was already there. With Richard, I think if he gets that confidence early, while he's at Miami, hopefully, that will allow him to be a pretty good performer here in the ACC, because length, speed, corner is a traits position. This guy's got it. He's a smart guy, Vanderbilt originally out of high school. So a lot of tools with Chevis Richard, a lot of, we're counting on him to play a lot. So he's someone with the microscope firmly on him.
Yeah, you mentioned the scouts are intrigued. I've heard the same thing. I actually had, one of the scouts tell me last year, why wasn't this guy playing last year after he saw him, play well against Florida State, because he brings something different to the table at that position. But like you said, against the smaller receivers, that'll be a test for him, but he has the tools to do it. It's all about putting it together for him.
Yep. And, we're talking about guys with length and speed. Miami added a player with length and speed, another transfer, Chevis Richard transfer from Vanderbilt, Deani Hill transfer from Marshall, someone that Chevis Jackson, the cornerbacks coach, very familiar with. Of course, we'll talk to both Chevis Jackson and Deani Hill later in this episode. But you go watch him. He's originally from Gainesville, Florida, sort of an underrated player. What I like about him, he's got good size, over 6 foot, 55 tackles, 1 INT last year against NC State, one of the top teams in the ACC. Can run, Florida guy. So he has traits, similar to Chevis Richard. I think what really stands out about Hill, and also this is something I should have mentioned on the Richard write-up, tackling is so important for corners in today's game with all these screens, all these plays that you can isolate a weak tackling corner in space and make them pay with big chunk gains. Richard needs to do a better job of that. You saw in the spring game when he missed that tackle on Restrepo that went for about 40 yards after the catch. That cannot happen against Florida and other teams on Miami's schedule. He's too big. He's too talented to allow that. Hill is an excellent tackler. I mentioned the 55 tackles last year, graded out very high on Pro Football Focus, and just watching film on him, he's a guy that gets guys to the ground. He's not going to maybe knock your head off like Dante Brown has the ability to, but a very consistent tackler. And that, coupled with the experience, the familiarity with Chevis Jackson, Lance Guidry also recruited him originally. So I think all those factors, we're going to allow him to see the field early this year.
And he can run. He can play in that slot. He can play the boundary. So I think you mentioned the familiarity, and we said it with Elijah Alston as well. We said it with Coach Derek Nicholson when he brought over KJ Cloyd. He brought over Jalen Alderman this year. All guys that they're familiar with, right? If they're being brought here by a coach who's worked with them, they believe that they can play at this level and they can play on this roster and be important pieces to this team. I'm very excited about what Deani Hill can bring to the table. And again, that versatility, man, it's very, very important to me at this position in particular. And we know that Coach Guidry likes to move these guys around and show different looks, especially in that back end. So,
and look, you look at this cornerback group, 3 transfers, and then a guy in Damari Brown that you beat out Alabama for. If you want that caliber of player and even an higher caliber of player, these 5 stars that we're trying to go after here in this class, Canes Connection, Miami's official NIL collective. The link is in our bio. You can also see it on our website, or you go to canesconnection.com/CIS. Using that link, the CIS link gives you the first month for $1, no matter what your price point is, as far as supporting Canes Connection NIL. Also, you get access to a private insider Zoom with myself where I can give you guys the latest on practice. We'll probably do one of those next Thursday, tentatively scheduled. That's probably would be when we'll do it. And I'll give you stuff that I can't say in this setting because it's going to be private information regarding practice, regarding recruiting, regarding the team. You will be the most informed Canes fans on the planet if you do support Canes Connection. And then you're going to know that when we beat the Gators and we win that championship and we continue to evolve as a program, you are part of it because your contribution directly impacts winning. So canesconnection.com/CIS. The link is in our bio, in our description, I should say, and it's on our website. Use that CIS link, and then you will get all those extra benefits. Also, we'll talk about the Miami Hurricane team store. Talk about apparel. Support the program directly while also buying the coolest apparel. You see Pete scanning the website here, MiamiHTS.com. This is Miami's official team store. That's why it's the Miami Hurricane team store. That's why you have athletes, Canes Connection athletes posing on the website with the clothes. You contribute, you get your clothes here. You're going directly to the athletic program, supporting the athletic program, and also getting premium gear like the slides, like the bucket hat and Hawaiian shirt Samson Akalola's rocking, autographed footballs, all kinds of things at MiamiHTS.com or the team store in person. Actually stopping by there after this podcast on US 1, right in front of UM at the Thesis Hotel. Just a great location, everything brand new. Miami Hurricane team store. Okay, with all those plugs out of the way, let's talk about some young players that are pushing for playing time. To me, those 4 guys I mentioned, they're going to play. The next wave are the guys that we're talking about here. And to me, one of the most intriguing guys in camp, someone who's got a lot of reps, it is Robert Stafford. This is a guy from the Melbourne area, 4-star recruit, picked Miami over Arkansas. Great athlete in high school. I mean, a guy that returned a lot of kicks, played wide receiver, scored on end arounds, also played corner and got picks for touchdowns. That dynamic athlete that Miami's maybe been missing at this cornerback position. Miami's known for having athletes, the Antrell Rolls, the Phillip Buchanans, guys that can score with the ball in their hands, guys that played both ways in high school. I think with Stafford, he is, I'm not saying he's those guys, but he's in that mold as a true athlete, a true playmaker. He can run. He's probably the fastest of these corners. Has adequate size. Question with him is experience and just, learning the position and being game tested, quite frankly, because there's going to be some ups and downs, but you hope to get through that because of the upside.
Yeah, you mentioned it. When I've been out at the practices for the media viewing portion, has been getting a lot of first team, reps with that group. And you said there's been a lot of talk about Chris Johnson, Bobby Washington, Bobby Pruitt, as you mentioned, as some of the fastest guys on the team, Ray Joseph, but Robbie Washington probably up there too, but I think Robert Stafford's right up there in that group. And obviously at that position goes a long way. Now, he's not the biggest guy right now. I think continues to need to add some good weight there. And I think you mentioned last year was sick during the season last year, so that probably set him back a little bit in terms of that experience you're talking about. May have had a chance to get on the field last year, but nice that he took essentially a redshirt year, right? It's rare when you see these guys who don't really play year one. You don't hear much transfer talk or anything about him, right? We haven't heard anything. We did not hear anything like that about him this offseason. So the coaches are excited about him and what he could bring to the table. But I agree, athletically, maybe a step above some of these other guys in the group.
Yeah, and the key, I think, with him is getting him enough experience this year where by the end of the year you got a guy, but not letting those growing pains cost you a game. That's going to be the line you walk with Stafford. Again, he was ready to play last year in return role, maybe on defense, but he did get sick in the middle of the season. He's fine now, but he's still very young. And he wasn't a guy that had a ton. It wasn't like a Pat Surtain or even a Daryl Porter that came in fully cooked, right? He was an athlete becoming a corner at the college level, and that is still in process, but very fast. The name that to me has the most helium of this second group right now, the guys that are pushing to crack the rotation of the four guys we started off with, OJ Frederic, Romanis Frederic, out of St. Thomas Aquinas. This is a guy, 6'1", all the physical tools. He looks the part. He was a two-way player at Deerfield Beach. He was a two-way player at St. Thomas, which is exceedingly rare. Also returned kicks at both spots. The size, the athleticism on display anytime you watched him. He also started at Miami's camp, which is when he got the offer, ended up flipping from West Virginia. Question with him, physicality a little bit, just because he's more of a wide receiver, kind of like Stafford. He's changing positions. You saw him when St. Thomas went and played some of these national games on TV. You can see the coverage ability, but the tackling was inconsistent. Again, guy played a lot of wide receiver and is making that conversion, but he's been working on his game, and the buzz on him has been constant since he arrived on campus. Everybody talking about his physical tools, his approach, his demeanor. I know, Pete, you interviewed him, but this is somebody who made waves from workouts, and now practices have started. He's continuing to make waves. You got an interception. I think I could talk about that because there's a picture on Instagram of him doing it. Has also made all other plays, and the buzz continues to build on him as a corner with that's rising. This is just a hot name right now with OJ Frederic.
Yeah, and you see I have this picture up here that was from a couple of weeks ago, and the preseason media stuff, and you can tell he's put some weight on. I think he told me in the interview he's gone from 172 to 188, 190 range in his. Because he was a late addition here. He wasn't a guy who was here during the spring. So you're talking about since May, really, he's put on that weight. Just speaks to his work ethic. Speaks to what a lot of these guys will do once they get their feet under them in the weight room program. But pretty drastic transformation quickly, which we talk about it with a lot of these young guys. That's step number one, right? So looks the part. Was a great interview when I talked to him. Seemed like a great kid, coachable. I've used that word a couple times now in this podcast in particular. But those are the things you need to get on the field early as a freshman, right? We all like to look at the rankings and their huddle tape and all that, but you've got to do those prerequisites, and he's taking care of business in that sense. So I think he's a guy who, especially some of these guys we're talking about, D, are we expecting them to see a lot of run in game one against Florida? I don't. It's tough to trust some of these guys in that environment right off the bat, right? But you look at the second, third, fourth games there, right? At USF's week, the fourth game, but those weeks 2 and 3 there, really a big opportunity for some of these guys to get some valuable reps there and get that experience.
No question. And shifting gears to another guy in that position, which is OJ Frederic's high school teammate at St. Thomas Aquinas, Ryan Mack, another guy who missed spring because of St. Thomas's graduation date, has been here since summer and is now out there on Green Tree. He's somebody who I would put him behind Frederic in the pecking order right now, but it's August 8th. A lot of room to grow, a lot of football to be played, but really good technician. His father, of course, Rod Mack, former Cane, and a coach at the youth level. But this is a guy with good speed, good size, not elite in either category, but certainly above the line of what is adequate, but it's just a really good player. He had a really, really good senior year for St. Thomas Aquinas. I think better than a lot of people expected. Great recognition skills. He sees it. He attacks. He's got good footwork at the corner position. He can find the football. He's not going to be gambling, but he's a guy that can break up the pass at the catch point. Good tackler. Just a real solid guy. I think this is the kind of guy that maybe takes a couple years to develop, but by the time he's like a 4th, 5th year guy, you're looking at a Daryl Porter type player, Jaden Davis type player who was drafted by the Arizona Cardinals last year, of course, transferring to Miami from Oklahoma. I can see that kind of career trajectory for a guy like Ryan Mack, assuming health and continued work.
Yeah, you see in this video here, he's number 27. And you mentioned the footwork. That was the first thing that comes to mind with him for me. And no wasted movement, which is so important at that position. Excited about him. Has the speed, as you mentioned, track guy as well. And he's always been around guys who maybe were kind of rated higher than him and things of that nature. So I think he's a guy that will continue to elevate his game. And I think was a big sleeper for this class last year, but seems like the word's getting out on him, and there's been some real good buzz about him recently.
Yeah, no question. And he's a guy that started off as a 3-star, ended up as a 4-star because he went to Under Armour All-America camp, or the game and practices, and was probably the best corner there, along with Ellis Robinson, who's, all world. But he was covering the best guys and doing well. So you like that direction. Guys that maybe are underrated that climb up the recruiting rankings during their senior season and the offseason. That tells you that they're competing and being successful on the field and trending in the right direction. Although I'll say, OJ Frederic, if this guy got re-ranked, like if you're just looking at this dude, I'm going back to Frederic now, you would think he was a high 4-star physical kind of guy. He's a look test dude all the way when you talk about ball skills, length, size, speed, and fluidity. But Ryan Mack right there with him. Some nice young corners for Miami they're going to need to push through. Of those three, Stafford, Frederic, and Mack, at least one of those guys is going to play a big role this year. Could be all three, could be, 2 of the 3. I don't know. But I'm pretty confident one of those 3 is going to play a big role where you see him on the field on top of special teams. It's going to be interesting to see who leads that pack. That's a battle to watch throughout camp.
And then we got to talk about Miles Muyong, not your typical walk-on here. D's a guy that has a lot of respect in that locker room. And every time I go out to these practices, he looks like he belongs in that group. Yeah,
he's getting a lot of reps with the second team. He's now a 4th-year player, I believe, a redshirt junior out of Chicago. Not your typical walk-on, a guy with ability, with size, with confidence. The guy's made a lot of plays on Green Tree. If you've been on Green Tree, you've seen number 38 in the mix covering top guys on the roster. So you say he's a walk-on, but he is not your typical walk-on. He's a guy that can play college football, and it gives the offense a good look, brings a good energy. You like that Chicago presence. Of course, you had Justin Scott and Marquise Lightfoot, 2 5-stars from Chicago in the past class. Muyong kind of started that trend, of course, as a walk-on, but somebody who's on the team and plays a role. So see him on special teams. I'm pretty sure you'll see him there, but somebody who's a good guy in that room and deserves a mention because he's playing. And when you go to practice, you'll see number 38 doing work. Want to give a quick shout out to my boy Coach Jay, Category 6 podcast. We usually don't shout out other podcasts on the show, but I wanted to give love to Coach Jay because he is one of the smartest football guys in this kind of Canes community. Of course, a former coach. You might have known him from the Twitter spaces, which I pop in on when I got a long drive. It is my favorite thing to listen to as far as just like that Twitter space kind of community, which is a unique vibe, kind of like a talk radio 560 vibe, but better. So shout out to Coach Jay and everybody in the spaces and everybody with the Category 6 podcast. I really enjoy listening. And Coach, great meeting you the other day. Talked about all these corners. Now let's get some words from some of the people themselves, including Coach Chevis Jackson and the corner he brought from Marshall, Deani Hill. Go Canes.
All right, here with Coach Chevis Jackson, University of Miami. Coach, first spring, obviously done now. Looking forward to fall camp, but how's South Florida treating you? What's that transition been like for you down here?
No, I like it. Just being here, the weather is nice. It's a lot more sunshine from where I, came from originally. But my family's adjusting well. Everybody's doing good.
Listen, there's tougher places to adjust to for sure.
Right.
So obviously there's been a lot made about your relationship with Coach Guidry. You come down here, you have worked with him previously. How big was that? Because look, it's obviously Miami's a great program, but that had to have been a nice sense of comfort for you, knowing that that working relationship that you guys already had.
Oh, for sure. Coach Guidry is a great defensive coordinator. He makes everybody feel good. He wants you to excel in what you do well, and he really made me feel at home. And knowing exactly what he wants within the defense has been a big benefit. It's like we never stop working together, so it's good to be here.
So I asked Deani Hill, I was like, man, are some of the guys, they ask you about Coach, what he's like day in, day out and all that. What's it been like for you? Obviously, looking at the film and knowing what you have on the roster is one thing, but learning these guys, each of them individually, what makes them tick, what makes them go, what's that process been like for you?
No, it's been good. The guys have welcomed me with open arms. Just being here and learning them, like you said, individually and collectively as a group has been good. I think spring, the 15 practice that we had in spring was helpful for me, and I'm looking forward to getting to work and getting ready for camp.
At corner, obviously a lot of moving pieces. You got DP coming back as a veteran guy. You have some other pieces who are coming back, but that group as a whole, how excited are you about them and the progress they made during spring heading into fall here?
I'm excited. Not with only them, but also just the entire secondary. Like I said, everybody's been working hard. I think we have a really good team, and I think we're working, try to get better each and every day. Practice to practice, rep to rep. Trying to get better and get ready for the season.
Deani is a guy that you're obviously very familiar with. Worked with him at Marshall. One thing I asked him was about his versatility, ability to play nickel, play on the outside as well. Talk about him a little bit, and how excited you are to be able to get to work with him again.
No, it's good. Deani was a good player for us at Marshall, and getting him here, is adding depth, and like I said, he's continuing his journey and getting bigger, faster, and stronger. I think having him with the group is only going to make us better and stronger and competitive. And like I said, we all as a group, we just want to work and try to get better every day.
How would you describe yourself as a coach? I mean, would you say you're a player's coach? Because listen, everyone likes to put labels on coaches, right? But what would you describe your coaching style?
I don't know. It just depends on the day. I think sometimes they need me to get after them. Sometimes they do what they need to do, and I think I'm a fair coach. I think I do what's needed to get what's done, get what it needs to be done. But I think right now I'm having fun. I'm enjoying coming to work. Coach Cristobal makes this a great atmosphere to come in here and work. And he lets you come in and you be yourself, and as long as the work is done and it's good. You know what I'm saying? So like I said, I'm happy to be here and I'm excited about the season. I'm ready to get to work.
My last question for you, recruiting wise, obviously we can't talk specifics about guys, but being down here in South Florida now, obviously an area that has historically produced defensive back talent. I mean, what has it been like? First of all, you've recruited the area before, but like really immersing yourself in the high school culture down here and all that, and laying the foundation for what's to come.
Like I said, it's talent rich down here. You know what I'm saying? Everybody can play ball down here. It's fast, quicker, taller, faster. It's good. So you really don't have to leave the state for real, and it's been good. You know what I'm saying? Just getting down here, getting my feet wet. And like I said, everybody's welcoming me with open arms, and like I said, I'm excited to be here, and again, ready to get to work, man.
Thank you, Coach. All right, Deani Hill here, transfer from Marshall, University of Miami, defensive back. Deani, appreciate you taking some time today. Talk to me a little bit about the transition to Miami. How has it gone? Obviously, you had some familiarity with Coach Guidry, so I know that was a big part of your decision-making process. But now that you've been here for a little bit and have gotten kind of acquainted with campus and everything going on here in Miami, what has your impression been of the program?
My impression has been nothing but great. I came here. I feel like my first 2 weeks of being here, I've been very welcome. So, me being able to come in and compete early, that made a big impact on the team. Just to show that I can ball. Coming from the Sun Belt, to the ACC. So I just feel like I have been nothing but welcome. Having my 2 coaches here, that just made it 2 times better. Familiar with the call, so I was able to come in and get rolling off the back. There's some changes here and there, but that's nothing that you can't have a hard time getting used to. But I just feel like since I've been here, I've been very welcome and just ready to continue the ball.
You mentioned your 2 coaches, obviously Coach Guidry and Coach Chevis Jackson, the defensive backs coach. Talk about him a little bit. And I mean, look, obviously he was here during the spring, but already doing a really good job recruiting wise, it seems like. So the guys who are here, did they kind of ask you what's Coach like? I mean, day in, day out when you got here?
See, the thing about him, nothing changed with him. At the end of the day, he all about ball, but he live by a thing called being where your feet are. So when we outside of this, we're not gonna worry about football. When we in here, we're gonna worry about just football. So he joke around with you, but you gotta be careful with the jokes that he joke around with you with, because he might flip the story if you have a bad day of practice. So it's he's an all around good coach. He's gonna be there for you on and off the field. But when it comes to ball, he's very strict. And at the end of the day, he want everybody to know that the best man will play. So it's not no favoritism nowhere, and everything is earned.
one of the big things people have talked about with you is your versatility. You can play some slot, you can play some outside corner as well. Where does that come from? I mean, do you take pride in being able to kind of play all over the defensive backfield there? And like, where do you expect to play this season?
I really can go anywhere, honestly. But I expect to play more outside. But being able to play multiple positions, that just give you more availability on the field, you know. And this year I look forward to having more consistent film this year. So if, like, sometimes when I get tired, I plan on coming out instead of staying in and getting them mediocre reps. I feel that having like versatility also helps with knowledge. And my freshman and sophomore year, I was just wanted to get on the field at Marshall. So we had Michael Abraham, we had Stephen Gilmore on the outside, which was two good cornerbacks. So I had to get in where I fit in at. And they came up with a man package for me to, you know, play inside and just play manned up, you know. And I just found out that's something that I can do. And, you know, man is my thing. And I don't have a problem going up and press each and every rep. So I feel like that's my strong point. But, you know, being able to play multiple positions allows people to get a break when they need it, allow them to be more consistent throughout the game, and just gives me the knowledge that I need to give someone else that needs it.
So you came over with, well, Elijah Alston was here, you know, a little bit before you, right, but he was at Marshall with you. What do you think this defense is getting with him? I think the fans have seen that pick six he had. They've seen some of the explosiveness off the edge, so they're excited about him. But you having a chance to, you know, work day in, day out with him at Marshall and now here at Miami, what is this defense getting in Elijah Alston?
The defense will definitely get some edge pressure. You know, he's a dog at the end of the day. You can expect him to be rolling out, whether that's to the flats. He can play like a cornerback, you know, like he's one of them big guys that want to run with the skill guys, you know, when it's time for conditioning. He like to do what the skill guys do, like to practice how they practice and like sometimes hop into our drills, you know. So I just feel like with him being that big and active, you know, he can be very versatile in each and every way that you can expect. So what we can expect from him is him being the best ability, like him being the best that he can be and playing the best at all times. But I for sure will look at like the edge pressure that he'll be given, because he will come off the edge very quick.
So week one, obviously have Florida. Don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, but obviously you're from the Gainesville area. So talk about how many ticket requests you're getting from the family, and you know what you expect that to be like out there.
Honestly, like, I haven't really like had much support from my family, like growing up, like coming from like the high school level, you know. I just feel like everybody just started to lynch on when I made it to college. So like with that being said, I like really lowered it down to like certain people. I ain't necessarily cut them off, I just distanced myself from them. So like I for sure know who comes to the game, but I just really look forward to, you know, keep developing now, and when the time comes, the time comes.
Last question here. I've been asking all the guys about the college football game. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk about the corner room because, I mean, you've seen it all over Twitter. Some guys, they didn't opt in on time, but they should be there. But you are on there, and fans are liking you, man. It seems like you're making a lot of plays on there. So what are your early impressions of the game and your rating and all that?
I have, like, no complaints at all but my speed.
Okay.
You know, that 89 speed, I just feel like it's a knock-on, you know. Don't get it wrong, he gonna get hands on, you know, he play ball, you know, he gonna get picks, you know, he gonna do what he's supposed to do. But I just feel like once you have a faster receiver, I say if he manned up, like once the receiver get about 50 yards down the field, it's a bump, you know. Yeah. So I just feel like with that 89 speed, it's just gonna give the offense, you know, like right away, like, okay, boom, I know if this ball 50 yards down the field, he's beat, you know. So that's like the only excuse. But other than that, I don't have no complaints.
Hey, they made you hit pretty hard on there though.
Right. So I mean, everything else good. The dude balling. So I really don't have no excuses. You know, I'm just humble and grateful to be on there.
Deani Hill, appreciate your time today, man. Best of luck.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you.
Yeah, this an insight to the Canes, and you know we ain't playing no games. Joaquin said dominate, so that's what we do. Home of the legends and 7th floor crew, down in Miami where hurricanes brew. You here for the rumors, we bring you the news, cause it's all about the you. And nobody do it like CanesInSight. 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 It's CanesInSight.